Welcome and thank you all for joining us today in our ongoing Women in Marketing series. Take Your Seat at the Table is a multifaceted program about women for all genders, and our purpose is to help women in marketing flourish at their careers. My name is Esther Elkos, and I'm the chair of Career Development and Networking Programs at the American Marketing Association, New York. We would like to extend our thanks to our premier partner, Green Book, a leading voice in the market research and consumer insight space, for supporting the AMA New York year-round. We also appreciate our dedicated board of directors and volunteers who work behind the scenes to make events like this happen. At AMA New York, we work every day to inspire, support, and celebrate brilliance in marketing. As a member, you have access to the most relevant knowledge base of data, tools, and people. If you're not a member yet, I invite you to join this dynamic organization to access essential resources, expand your knowledge through a full schedule of events around marketing skills, career readiness, and emerging trends, network among your peers, and connect with leaders who help shape the future of marketing, and elevate your leadership profile by volunteering, providing expertise, and mentoring. We offer a wide variety of programs, so make sure to subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media to stay tuned. As a recap of our upcoming events, on March 25th, engage in a fireside chat on marketing to changing America and gain actionable steps on how marketers and market researchers can better partner to bridge cultural gaps and better connect with brands with all of their customers. On April 7th, we'll engage in an insightful discussion as we dive into all things data with expert panelists from Google, Salesforce, and Cisco. And on April 15th, don't miss our ongoing Young Women at Work series, which focuses on providing strategies, tools, and mentoring to help young professional women succeed in the workplace. If you're interested in joining AMA New York, you can sign up on our website, and please feel free to contact us if you have any questions regarding membership. We're about to begin, but before we do, I'd like to remind you that we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A with Leah, so feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself and also ask her any career-related questions. And now it's my pleasure to present our host, Young Mi Park. Her background spans 3 continents and diverse industries: consumer, education, government, advertising, media, and technology. Today, she's a lecturer at Rutgers Business School and Columbia University. And our guest speaker, Leah Holzman Glass, head of global marketing at Amazon Pay. Leah is a dynamic and disciplined B2b marketing leader, offering 20 years of experience creating integrated marketing and communication strategies that drive growth and amplify brand stories. Young Mi, please take it away.
Thank you so much for that intro, Esther. And hello, everybody. And hello, Leah. So nice to see you again. How are you?
Hi, Young Mi. It's great to be here. Thanks, Esther, for the intro. I'm seeing a few familiar faces up here on the screen, so I'm delighted to be here. AMA New York is one of my favorite organizations. So even though I'm in Seattle, I still like to stay connected.
We like to hear that a lot. So, Leah, let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us something about your family and the kind of childhood you had?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a Foreign Service brat. So what that means is that my dad worked for the State Department. So I had the privilege growing up of spending a number of my childhood years in West Africa, in Europe, in South Asia. And it was just a really wonderful experience. And I recommend it to anyone who's thinking about a career path outside of marketing. Foreign Service is awesome.
So many interesting places. Can you tell us something about them and how that background is fairly unusual. So tell us, did those places contribute to the kind of person you are today, do you think?
Yeah, I think it made me more, I think I'm very culturally aware and engaged. So from a very young age, and I'm very comfortable with like new things. Like some people, sometimes, new things and change can feel challenging and scary. And for me, it's always brought like a lot of excitement. And I'm, I'm so comfortable with change that I'm starting to think it might be like a bit of a fetish. So anytime there's like the possibility of something changing, I'm like, oh, really? Like what's going to change? What can I do to make it happen faster or more differently? Yeah,
right?
so it can be, I think that it's been useful in my career,
Mhm.
that comfort with change, because obviously, especially in the era of my career growth with the growth of digital, because I started my career in the late 90s. Change has been, the most constant thing. And I've worked at companies where there's been a lot of change. I think people who have worked for me and members of my family might think of it as a bit more of a fetish.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Change is the new normal.
It
Um,
is.
but you and I have something in common. We're both third culture kids. Are you familiar with that term?
I'd love to hear your perspective on it. I've heard it, but I know you have a special perspective, and I think sharing that would be great.
So a third culture kid is a phenomenon where the child grows up in a culture that's not the culture of their parents, and they don't fully adopt the culture of their parents or the culture that they grow up in because it's all mixed up, their cultural foundations and orientation. And so as a result, having that different kind of culture, there's been a fair amount written about that. And I'm sure, I mean, having been a foreign service kid, you've met tons and tons of third culture kids. So in terms of, these days, we're talking about a lot about tribes and fitting in and communities and things like that. Do you feel more comfortable with other third culture kids, or do you feel that having that kind of exposure has enabled you to feel comfortable anywhere? Or what kind of culture would you say that you come from?
So it's a totally mixed up culture, as you said. Believe it or not, looking at me, you could never tell, but my mother's actually biracial. I'm actually part Asian, 25% Asian actually, so pretty significant chunk. Although I look completely Caucasian, and so so I have those experiences. And then I think the other thing that's for me, what was different is that my family's originally from Hawaii. Both of my parents were born and raised in Honolulu, but we never lived there. So when people ask me, like, where are you from? It's a very confusing question for me because I was born in Washington, D.C. I lived there for extended periods. I don't consider it to be home. I guess Honolulu is home because now that's where a lot of my extended family is, and that's where my cultural roots are. But I've never actually lived there in my entire life. So it's a funny question. So when people ask where are you from, depending on the situation, I'll often give a different answer. And I don't really have it. So sometimes I'll say, oh, I'm from Washington, D.C. Sometimes I'll say I'm from Hawaii. Sometimes I'll say I'm from the East Coast. So just depending on how much time people have to answer the question, it should be very straightforward.
Yeah, no, that's a tough question for all third culture kids and some other groups as well. Also going a little bit back, I think you said that you studied history undergrad, and that's a really, really interesting discipline these days, especially because of, we're undergoing dramatic change. We're experiencing things that certainly recent generations haven't experienced, maybe way back there have been similar experiences. But in terms of where we're going in the future, there are, a lot of open questions. Technology, globalization, migration patterns, all of that is really changing the direction of the world in ways that seem more and more difficult to anticipate. So given your historical background, do you have any thoughts on, where we are now, why we're here, where we're going, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, first of all, I did study history. I love history. I'm a believer in the moniker that history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. So you see, different constructs occurring and recurring. I'm a believer in that particular, I guess, field of study. But I think that, so there's two things about history. One of the things that I've always believed is that historical context should be considered more in this business decision making, and in most of my career it hasn't. And I think one of the things that's really exciting about this renewed focus on diversity and inclusion, not just because it's such a crucial issue, but also because suddenly you have people actually interested in the historical context, that there's an openness to think about, well, there's a reason that we're where we are today. And so whether it's like the sudden awareness of Juneteenth or International Women's Day, and there seems to be authentic interest in trying to understand that, like, we're not here where we are today with respect to diversity, inclusion, social and racial justice by accident. We're here as a result of decisions that have been made over a very long period of time. And so, so in my view, that's the crucial thing, and that's what I'm observing now starting to change. So, and I think it's great.
Mm-hmm. So you feel optimistic, which is wonderful to hear.
I do. Well, I'm always an optimist, because if I like change, I have to be an optimist. Otherwise, things are going to go really badly for me, because then change is good. So I have to be optimistic. I have no choice.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that has to, the direction has to do with our attitudes and where we take it as well. Speaking of which, I'm going to come back to this topic, but speaking of which, let's turn the tables back to you for a moment. And that's an odd thing to say when this whole interview is about you. But you said that you're an accidental marketer. And that's really interesting, especially, considering how successful you've been. So tell us, how did you become a B2b marketer?
So I think of my 20s as what I call the wandering years, or sometimes maybe the word fumbling is a better word to describe it. So the fumbling years, where I was like fumbling around from job to job. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I was basically living in DC, paycheck to paycheck, working for temp agencies, sort of doing various receptionist jobs. I was kind of like, well, maybe I should just become like an executive. Maybe I should be an executive assistant, because like I did this one temp job working for an executive and I really enjoyed it. And I had some skills because like of my, because of my college, I did a lot of writing. I'm a good writer. So, I had some skills that people liked, and I was responsible. I showed up on time, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, one day I ended up sitting at the reception desk at a place called Digital Inc., which at the time was the corporate name for WashingtonPost.com. And I showed up there a few weeks after the website launched. So if you want to guess how old I am, you can go back and look when the website, the WashingtonPost.com launched, and you'll start getting some clues. And it was, and I was just sitting there answering phones. I didn't know what a website was. I never had an email account. Suddenly I had an email account. There was this screen, and there was like all these websites I could visit. I ordered my first book from Amazon on that screen, sitting at that reception desk. So anyway, I was good at it. I was responsible. And so one day another publishing group, which was called Politics Now, they were covering the 96 election, and they needed like a sales marketing office assistant. So they asked me to do that. And I was like, it was kind of like a little promotion. So I said, great, I'll do it. So I went and I started working on that. And in that process, I ended up working on presentations for like really early ad sales. Mm-hmm. I ended up manually pulling together stats for like web hits for the website. And I was having a great time. I loved it. It was really interesting. It was kind of like the convergence of like media, politics. It was really fun. And after that, I was like, I want to be part of this. I don't know what this is, this digital thing, but I know that I want to be part of it. And so that started to give me some focus and direction, and kind of the rest is history. I mean, there's a lot more of crazy stuff that happened between that moment, but that was a really pivotal moment for me, because it was me figuring out, hey, this is something I'm interested in. This is something I want to work on.
Oh, great. So before we get into all of that crazy stuff that happened in between, Tell us a little bit more about B2B. B2B is getting so interesting these days. It used to be fairly simple, mostly focused on sales support, but these days it's become so sophisticated. And I know now that you're also engaged with B2C. So the second part of that question is, are you seeing differences between B2B and B2C? So can you talk about those things a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, B2B really has come a long way. I'm looking at the screen and I'm seeing the president of AMA New York, Karen McFarland, and Karen and I have been on a long B2B journey. So she's smiling. I can tell you it really has changed. And I think the biggest change that I would say is around kind of like the methodologies of the practice. So, you have like groups like Serious Decisions, which is now Forrester, who really developed ways for B2B marketers to think about what they're doing, think about lead gen, think about demand generation, how you acquire customers, what are the things that actually are the true inputs that deliver the outcomes that you want, both in marketing and sales. The work on sales and marketing alignment at B2B has come from so far over the last 20 years of my career. It's amazing. And the understanding of what you need to do in order to create a successful alignment with sales, I think, is also changed. The other thing that's been transformative over the last several years, I think, is the clarification of functional competencies. So things like product marketing, demand generation, brand marketing, content marketing, like really clarifying what are the skill sets, what are the things that one needs in order to be effective and successful in these certain functional competencies, and helping marketing leaders to understand what they really need to deliver results for the organization. So those are some of the changes. The other thing that I think is most exciting is at some point in the last decade, it became okay for B2B to be beautiful. And that is also one of the things that's awesome, which is that now you really see B2B companies out there trying to make an emotional connection with their customers, trying to have a really beautiful brand presence that inspires people, versus I think like when I started my career, the perspective was B2B, you just have to be really conservative, don't scare people, you're going to freak them out if you look too good, that kind of thing. And so now that change also, I think, is really awesome. And it certainly makes the marketing a little more fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in some ways, every once in a while I'll see something that makes me wonder has B2B become more sophisticated than B2C? So, how do you feel about it now that you're managing both types of marketing?
I think B2B brings a level of complexity that B2C doesn't have. So B2C has its own complexities, but one of the things I used to always say before I worked in B2C, so excuse me to B2C marketers out there, I used to say, well, B2B and B2C are different. We're not selling sweaters, right? And so one of the things about B2B that's more complex is that you're dealing with multiple people, right? So in B2C, you often have one person and you're dealing with a lot of different channels. And like, how do you use those channels to connect with that person, to motivate them, to take the action that you're seeking? Whereas in B2B, you don't just have to motivate through the life cycle of the customer, but you have to motivate the life cycle of the deal. And you often have different people who have different reasons for being part of it, and different motivations, different incentives. And oftentimes those incentives and motivations are actually in tension with each other within the actual deal. So this complexity, I think, is just there, and it exists in B2B. And one of the biggest mistakes that can be made in, when I see B2C marketers come over into B2B, and you often hear even leadership say, hey, well, I want to know what's really working. And they use that understanding of what's really working to trade off and say, well, let's do more of this and less of that. And in B2B, you can't really do that because you don't know where that channel or where that particular tactic is working in amongst all the different people who are involved in the life cycle or rather the purchase journey. And so you can't do this kind of trade-off. And so the way that you think about measurement in B2B is what I call, on my team, anyone's there would laugh at this, is what I call the layer cake, right? So you need all these different layers of tactics and channels and activities to have this cake, and then someone needs to be able to take a bite, and it's got to taste really good for everybody. But you need all of those different ingredients. You can't just have one. So that's kind of my little that's my little rant on B2B versus B2C.
I love your expressions. I can tell you're a good writer. You know, it became safe for B2B to become beautiful. B2B as a layer cake. All of that is wonderful. Um, so, Leah, not only were you an accidental marketer, but I think you've also said that you were an accidental leader. So tell us about how you became a leader.
So I found myself one day managing a team with no experience managing a team whatsoever. It didn't go well. I'll just leave it at that. Karen's laughing again. She knows the story. Anyway, it didn't go well. And after that, I really committed myself to learning how to manage. And I think that there's a difference between management and leadership. And management is one step towards leadership. And I'm talking about more in the corporate world than I am about, more broadly, because there's a lot of different ways that people can lead and be leaders without being managers. So in terms of the context of this conversation, being an effective manager is a foundation of being a great leader. And so I focused myself there. I'll give a book recommendation. It's called 1 Minute Manager and the Monkey. It's a great book. Also, actually, all the 1 Minute Manager books are really good. And I worked on this for a number of years. And it was a singular focus of mine, I would say, which is just testing, trying, learning what are the things that work. How do I manage up, down, and across an organization? And it's an endless journey. Like there's no, just the other day I was talking to one of my mentors and she's like, Leah, you have to work on your parallel influencing. And I'm like, I know. I feel like I was working on that 10 years ago. She's like, I know you were, but you got to keep working at it. It's different now, So so I would say it's also a continuous effort. And so now when I think about management, I come at it from a somewhat different perspective than I have in the past, where it's more now about it's about empowerment, it's about prioritization, it's about making sure that I'm removing obstacles. I consider that to be one of the most crucial things that I do as a leader today is helping my team to be successful, and doing the things that I can do, and also doing the things that only I can do versus trying to do things that they can do as well.
Oh, such a rich opening. Tell us a little bit more about these different types of management and leadership, up, down, sideways, parallel influencing, all of that. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So if you think about it's really about adjusting your style, right? So if I'm having a conversation with my VP, it's going to be really different from the conversation that I'm having with one of my direct reports, which will also be different from a conversation that I will have with one of my peers, who's part of another team. And so really tuning both your style to both the particulars of that relationship. So obviously my boss needs different information than my direct report, and similarly my peer, but also, managing to the particulars of that person's style. Some people are, they're all about the data. They want to know, they want to dive in. Some people are about the headline. They want to know, hey, just tell me, don't bury the lead. Tell me what I need to know. And so learning how to attune your style to those situations and those particular people is, I consider to be just an ongoing journey that's never complete. And, sometimes I make mistakes and I get it wrong, and I just have to dust myself off, own it, and go back and try again to do better the next time.
So it would be wonderful if you can share either one of your successes, your experiments, your lessons learned. Give us a concrete example so we can feel a little bit of this that you've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that so for me personally, one of the sort of transformative moments for me in my leadership was, I was having a conversation with, I work with a coach, and I'm telling her about some situation and I'm really fired up. and I'm angry and I'm insistent about this person has done this thing and it's really bad, and I'm and I'm going on and on. And she says to me, she just stops me. She's like, I have to interrupt you. I have to ask, do you want to be successful or do you want to be right? And I was like, whoa, I cried. I actually cried. Like I started crying. Like I completely lost it. And it was so important because I realized that that what I was trying to do and what I was getting upset about actually had nothing to do with what the company needed to do to be successful, had nothing to do with what my team needed from me in terms of ensuring that they're growing and being successful. And it was really just about me wanting to make this other person wrong so that I could be right about what I wanted to do, because I thought that that was the right thing to do, because it was the best practice, because it was, and the most hilarious part is I don't even really remember what it was anymore, because it was a couple of years ago. But what I do remember is that really changed how I approached everything. And I went from that perspective to a totally different one, where all of a sudden I went to my team and I was like, okay, guys, we're shaking things up. This is what the sales team's been asking for, and we're going to give them everything they want and more. And everyone's like, wait, what? You're supposed to be spending all your time saying no. And I was like, no, we're just going to say yes to everything and let's see what happens. And you know what happened? It all worked out really well, and the world didn't end, and sales was happy, and actually my job got a lot easier. And like all I had to do was like make it okay for us to support, National Cupcake Day. And so it's like, so that those are some of the trade-offs that I think are really important. And you should just be always questioning yourself. What am I really committed to, and what am I getting attached to an idea of a way that I think things are supposed to be, rather than focusing on the things that are really important, which are things like, am I supporting my team? Am I focused on what's best for the company? What's, what we need to achieve our goals, and so forth.
That is so brilliant. That I love your example so much, because there's been so much pain, death, and destruction come from the idea of being right, right? And yes. Actually, the older I get, the more I believe that there's no such thing. That's right.
That is correct. There's not. Actually, I have a Post-it note that I keep on my desk that says, nothing is wrong.
That's wonderful.
Right? It's a little bit of a play on words, because nothing is wrong, just
that's
like
wonderful.
Nothing's right.
That's wonderful. And that goes hand in hand with embracing change and
yes.
Looking for the future. Wonderful, wonderful. But it's very interesting, Leah, because it seems that you do a lot of things accidentally. So where does this approach come from, and how in the world are you so successful at it? Yeah.
I think it probably does go back to that comfort with change. I always see the silver lining. So anytime something changes, maybe for a minute I'll have, like, for example, even if someone tells me, oh, I'm leaving your team, I'm going to go do something else. At first I'm like, oh, I'm bummed, it's disappointing. I think about like, oh, wow, like how am I going to fill, the hole that this person's going to leave? But then very quickly I'm able to shift my mind to, oh, well, this is a new possibility. Like what new things can we find to do? What can we improve? How can we change? And it's just, I guess I would say it's more of a state of mind. And so what that does, though, I don't know if anyone is a fan of 6-word memoirs, but I am, and I have multiples that I am looking at all the time. But one of the first ones that I wrote was an open mind opened many doors. And so this accidents concept is really a lot about just having an open mind. Before I was married, I used to say when I was dating, I was like, open your mind without lowering your standards, right? So like that's and it's, I think it's having an open mind and being willing to explore what's possible allows you to get up from things that happen, and accidents can feel great.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us about one of those accidents that turned out wonderfully? Maybe in the beginning it was a little scary or looked like it was in the wrong direction.
I'm trying to think about that. I think that, one of the things, and maybe this is less accident, but, more like things happening for a reason, like one of the things that I did was in 2000, I think it was 2007, 2009, I was working for a company. I was heading up marketing. Things were going pretty well, I guess. But I wasn't happy. I was in a lot of conflict with my boss. I was very committed to being right. This is before I figured out that I would rather be successful than be right. And so I resigned. And I resigned in the middle of the global recession, after the whole financial system imploded.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I'm resigning. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I had this sort of general idea that I wanted to lead another marketing organization, that I wanted to have a VP title. That was kind of what I said I wanted to do. And then when I changed my LinkedIn to say that I was not there anymore, all of a sudden I just started getting emails from people asking me to work on projects. And, hey, I need some help with this. I need, we're trying to put together a deck. Can you do a research project? Just like all this stuff. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So then I was like, oh, well, maybe I should start my own consulting business. So I did. And I did that for 3.5 years.
Wow. So that kind of segues nicely into my next question, because you've worked at all sorts of different companies, startups, medium-sized companies, large companies, new companies, old companies, working for yourself. So can you tell us about some of the differences and maybe kind of skills and attitudes marketers need to work in these different contexts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll flip it a little bit, Young Mi, and say that I think that, the skills that you need in the different contexts are pretty transferable in general. And so the question to ask yourself as you're looking at your career is, where am I best equipped to add value? One, and then two, where am I going to learn the most? And so for me, for example, a couple of years ago, I felt that the place where I was best equipped to add value would be at an earlier stage startup. And I also felt like that was the place where I could learn the most about marketing and how to do, a set of marketing activities that I wasn't particularly good at that time, which was demand gen. And so, so I really pursued that type of a role because I knew that that would be the place where I could learn the most, and also where the experiences that I had would bring the most value. And so, think about, it's kind of like a value equation, I guess, which is what am I going to do best for this company? Like, so for example, like today, like if an early stage startup came to me and said, hey, we want you to come in and help us with marketing, I'd be like, I don't know if I can add a lot of value, because based on what I want to do and what I want to learn, I would want you to like hire a bunch of people and spend a ton of money, which probably doesn't make sense for where you are in terms of your business and what you need to be successful. So you probably need a different type of marketer. And so those are the things that I would urge people to think about as you're making these decisions. What can I learn, and what value can I bring with what I know today?
Fantastic. So you mentioned one of your mentors, and love to hear how you acquired that mentor. And I also know that you are a mentor. So, why are you a mentor? And, how do you be a mentor effectively? So.
Yeah, so I have a number of different mentors, or people that I guess they are mentors. They're people that I talk to, that I commiserate with, that offer me advice and support me and help me to make better decisions, bring a new perspective. So you don't have to have a formal mentor. There's a whole set of people, like Young Mi, you said your tribe. People who can help and support you in your career. I do think that in terms of formal mentorship, one of the benefits, if you are going to have a formal mentor, is you can often get someone who's bringing a level of objectivity to the situation that can also help you and support some of the decision making that you may need. So if you're relying too much on for career advice, friends and family, they really love you, and they may not tell you the real deal with what's going on with how you're showing up. Whereas a mentor, a more formal mentor, may be able to do that for you. So for me, I've been involved in informal mentorship, of course, for a long time, but formal mentorship, I worked when I was in New York. I was part of a mentorship program there for specifically for women in marketing and advertising, which was great. And I helped to sort of administer that program, which I enjoyed, and the matching of mentees with mentors and so forth. But I think that, and so for me, like mentoring in many ways, the thing that I try to get to support my mentees in is like, relax. Life is long. It's precious, but it's long, and you've got time. And don't make every situation like a life or death, thing. It's a journey, and your career, and it's not the destination, and you shouldn't become attached to a singular path or approach. And you want to have a goal, and the goal can be as broad as, I want to have a fulfilling career. And then you can kind of drill down into what specifically that may mean. And by the way, give yourself permission to change your mind, right? You're allowed to say, hey, this isn't what I want anymore. I want a different path now, and do that, and give yourself permission to do that. So the biggest thing piece of advice that I try to impart on my mentees is to give yourself permission to make the changes to get to that fulfillment that you're seeking. And don't become too attached to doing it one way or another way, because there's no perfect way to do it.
Great. So do you think it's useful to have mentors inside the company, outside the company, both? What's your thoughts on that?
I think all of the above. I think it's valuable. I've got people, I have someone who I talk to who's outside of the company who helps me a lot. I have a mentor inside of the company as well, who helps me. You really can't, I think that one of the most powerful things that you can do as a leader is to ask for help. And that's what mentoring is. And so for me, like when someone asks me to help them, I feel very honored. And so I like to go and ask people to help, ask for help for myself in return.
Wonderful. And the company that you're at right now happens to be, I think, one of the most fascinating organizations on earth. And it's famous and infamous as well for a whole lot of things. And one of the things that they're very well known for is their very unique workplace style. So tell us, what was the transition like for you, and how in the world do you onboard at a company with such a unique style?
Yeah, so one of my little mantras about Amazon is, we do things differently and we get different results. And so one of the things that's most different about Amazon from other companies is the leadership principles. And you can Google them, they're out there. First of all, it's amazing the extent to which they're absolutely infused into the culture. I was used to, before Amazon, this things that are sort of, on a whiteboard in the hallway or something like that. And my first week at Amazon, someone said, oh, we really need to put on our customer obsession hat or something. And I was like, are you being ironic? Come on, really? And yes, really, that they weren't being ironic. They were being completely serious. And the best thing about the leadership principles is I view them as, they're like a roadmap to the culture, right? And what they're designed to do is incentivize a set of behaviors and a decision-making style that's quite precise, while at the same time being very ambiguous. And it really works. And the other thing I would say about Amazon is that, the customer obsession leadership principle, it's obviously central and if you look at like videos of Jeff Bezos, like you'll hear, if you look at a video of him talking about customer obsession 20 years ago, and you look at one from like last week, he sounds exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you couldn't see him physically, see his appearance, you would think that it was like the same week that he was having this conversation. Mm-hmm. And so the extent to which these have been consistent, and what they do is, you know, customer obsession, I think, enables a level of objectivity in the decision-making that makes the company much more effective. Mm-hmm. And so what that means is that everyone in the company is very committed to customers. Mm-hmm. And when you bring forth an argument or a business case that's customer focused, people recognize it immediately, and they reset what their thought process. Wait a second, am I really being customer obsessed, or am I thinking about something else? And that really drives a very productive conversation. You know, and as a result, you know, the company, I think, and the people who really invest in operating against these leadership principles and leveraging the behaviors they encourage are very successful at Amazon.
Very, very, very good. So you know, I can hear the passion in your voice around the leadership principles. Would you say is that what you enjoy best about the company, or is there something else that you enjoy best? And is there anything that you would change if you could?
So I enjoy, yeah, I mean, the leadership principles are, I enjoy that. I think Amazon, you know, the opportunity to work on, so one thing Amazon has, and it's really changed my perspective on my career. So I used to think about my career growth in terms of what's the next job, what's the next role, what's the next title. And now I think about my career and what's the next problem I want to work on. What's the most interesting thing that I could be working on? And that is a total shift. And that's one of the things that I think is, you know, really great about Amazon, because that's the lens through which you view the work that you do. The other thing about Amazon is that one of the most surprising things, you know, because the company does have a reputation for sort of a tough culture. It's very intense, and it is intense, and the cadence of work is intense, but people are really nice. And Amazon doesn't have a great tolerance for people that aren't nice. So when even from the very beginning, from my first interviews with Amazon, everyone was so nice. People are too nice. Like, what's going on? And it was great. And so that's one of the things that's great about it. The other thing that I've really hooked into with Amazon is the document writing. So I have, you know, this is another area where I have been completely converted. You know, I was like a total PowerPoint ninja, and I, you know, was always working on decks for, you know, years and years. And I came to Amazon, and it was, you know, and a lot of, I'm not scared to write, because I've actually, when I was consulting, I did a lot of writing, so I know how to write. And but the first thing I did, and this is always my advice to any new joiner Amazon, just start writing. Don't be afraid of it. Just go for it. It's a skill, not a talent. They're not asking for the great American novel here. This is like literally like there's a set of there's a ton of information about how you write in the Amazon style, and just go for it. And because at Amazon, these documents are the way that your ideas and strategies get in front of the right people. And so if you cannot be an effective document writer at Amazon, it will be very hard to grow and be successful, because your ideas are just not going to get out there. And so I always encourage people, like, become a competent doc writer. Like, you don't have to be the best doc writer, just be, you know, good enough so that you can communicate effectively. And it brings so much more clarity also to the other things that you're doing in your work. So it's I think it's one of the things, again, that Amazon does differently, and they do get different results. I mean, I think this is why so many things have been successful with Amazon, is because of the clarity of thought and the vigilance around having all the information that you can to make the right decision.
Sounds like a lot of super strengths. Anything that you would change if you could? And this is probably going to be something that's personal to you. So
I wish, well, at Amazon, we have tons of data and lots of tools, and I wish our tools had better user interfaces, meaning our internal tools. So that would be nice. But it's hard work to put all that stuff together.
Did that was absolutely brilliant what you said about how it changed your attitude towards how you manage your career. Did Amazon change your leadership style in any way?
I would say, so one thing, I don't think stylistically it changed too much because I felt very comfortable at Amazon right away in terms of the way that that I think about the work and the planning. What it did change that's really crucial is how I think about hiring and developing people. Amazon has a methodology to hiring in terms of focusing, especially the interview process, on behaviors and examples versus on credentials and what's in the CV and so forth. And before Amazon, I'd been a pretty successful hirer, but I didn't know why. Because I was always like, I would have these sort of I called myself an instinctive hirer. Like I would meet someone, I would have this conversation with them, and I would be like, yeah, I know you're the right person. I just know it. And then I would hire them, and oftentimes I was right. They were the right person, but I never really knew what I was looking for. Never had good questions at interviews and things like that. And now I understand now what the common ground between those things are, because what I was learning and getting from those conversations was a set of behaviors and a set of examples of things that they'd done. And those would be a better indicator of what they can do and how successful they would be than, whether or not they have a degree in marketing or in journalism. It's like, what have you done? And that piece of it has been huge. And I think that now when I go to hire people, like I really know what I'm looking for. And of course I have like a lot of, obviously Amazon's got a whole infrastructure around hiring as well. But that focus on examples and on behaviors is crucial. And I also think, by the way, as Amazon seeks to diversify its workforce, this will be one of the ways that they'll be able to do it, because again, they're looking at, hey, what are the examples? What are the things that you've done that showcase that you can be successful, at Amazon versus, where'd you go to school? What job did you have prior? Things like that.
Thank you. Thank you. Very wise words. So many more things I want to ask you, but I'm just about to open it up to questions from the audience. But one more question. So one thing that people talk about all the time that increasingly I think is a myth, and I don't necessarily even think it's a healthy way to think about our lives, but work-life balance, and that discussion oftentimes can even make us feel guilty about, not having enough hobbies or social interests or, priorities in different aspects of life. And this is especially true. I mean, it seems to be mostly women. Men have this conversation too, but women almost always have this conversation. And, I don't see that many examples. And some women, generally like to work or have focus. And at the end of the day, we're after all one human being. So you, Leah, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a daughter, you're a friend, you're a human being who's had a really interesting background. How do you feel about your personal self versus your work self? Is there a distinction? How do you manage all of this?
Yeah, I don't think of it as a distinction. I think that I think it's the same. And it's funny, when I read that question, I was thinking about it a lot, and I was like, how do I think about this? And it's I don't view it as a binary choice. I think that who I am at work is also who I am at home. I think that it's about prioritizing the things that are really important to you. And a woman that I work with actually had a really interesting construct. We were talking about like time management, and she's like, I had to change my approach and stop thinking about it in terms of time and think about it in terms of energy. So where am I getting my energy rather than where's my time coming from? I have a lot more thinking to do about that concept, but I really liked that perspective, which is, hey, it's not about, because there's a finite number of hours in the day, but there's also a finite amount of energy. And so where are you going to put that energy and effort? relative to the time you have. And I thought it was a good perspective. So I've been giving some thought about that all the time. And I guess my final thing is, for me, like the balancing of all this stuff, it's like ruthless prioritization and excellent childcare. Those are my like two pieces of advice to people. I've always prioritized the things that are important to me, and then I've always made sure that I have excellent childcare.
Very, very, very important for sure. All right, so we had one question that was sent in advance, and I'm going to squash that together with a question that came in through. So what advice would you give a student today looking for a job in marketing? And what advice would you give somebody who stepped away from traditional marketing roles and is now seeking to come back after a number of years? So two different,
Yeah. So for someone who's entering a career in marketing today, I would say don't invest in the work. And, a lot of times you have these conversations with people who have like 2 years of experience and they're like, oh, well, I want to be a VP in 3 years. And I'm like, what? Why? Like, why would you want to do that when you've got so much more that you could learn that will make you, 10 times better? And so I really think that like, I would recommend to anyone, follow the path. There's no need to be on a fast track. And if you're meant to be on a fast track, you'll end up on one by working hard and doing the good work, and by building relationships. I think that like, and by the way, on the relationships point, I can't tell you how important that is. For me, it's always been a blind spot throughout my career and something that I'm constantly working on, which is making sure that you're building the right relationships, both with the people who manage you and the people that, your colleagues, and then the people who you may manage, and, and make your boss look good. Like that's the thing. I mean, for me, like always, especially over the last several years, making my boss look good has been a huge priority of mine, making sure that there's no surprises. And so that, and that sets me up to be successful, which then allows me to set up my own team to be successful. So those are a few little things. I'm sorry that they're not like more prescriptive, but doing the work and learning the craft and taking jobs that will allow you to do that. That's the most important thing, especially when you're just coming out of college.
Great words of wisdom. And how about the person who wants to go back into marketing?
So I would say, don't be afraid to, so first of all, I would say, whatever you've been doing since, I will bet my next paycheck that there's a lot of transferable skills, and hunt those out and take your skills as a marketer to remarket and repackage whatever you've been doing. Whether you've been a mom or you've been doing, you went into another field, you tried sales, you tried something else. You've been using your marketing skills all along, guaranteed. So find a way to position what you've been doing to showcase that you've grown. And even though maybe you haven't had a specific marketing in your job title for the last couple of years, it doesn't matter. You've probably been doing some great marketing all along.
So to get a little bit more granular on that question, could you share a couple of the attributes that you look for when you hire someone now with your more robust system?
Yeah, so one of the things that I look for is I look for people who've built things. So one of the questions I'll often ask in an interview is I'll say, can you tell me about a time that you built something from scratch, from the ground up? And what that tells me about a person is, one, it tells me a little bit about sort of their ability to think big and be creative and come up with bigger ideas. It tells me about their ability to sort of plan and organize and get things done. And it tells me about their ability to deliver results. And so that is, to me, and someone, and big and small, it doesn't matter, right? Depending on where you are in your career. If you're, a recent college graduate, it'll be, something more basic probably, but if you're, more seasoned executive, it'll be something more complex. But the point is, have you done that? And can you give me an example?
Great. So Alicia Rossetti, if you'd like to add on any question, you're welcome to. And anybody else, please type in your questions in the chat. Gabriela Guerrera Menanya is asking, there are so many talented people in the market today. What skills, and this is kind of a related question, what kind of skills do you suggest that a marketer develop in order to keep on growing and set yourself up for a meaningful, successful career, in addition to building something?
Yeah. I think being a good writer. Mm-hmm. I think being a good writer, and I don't mean being a good copywriter, that's a separate skill set. And not everyone has that talent, because I do believe that being able to write like a brilliant ad is a talent. But being a good writer, to be able to express yourself in an effective written communicator is really important. And then the other piece that is crucial is just verbal communications as well. Just being able to communicate effectively. Mm-hmm. It is the way that, you earn trust. It's the way that you build credibility. Communication is, that's you in the world, is your communication. So both written and verbal. Focus on it and always try to make it better.
Great. I agree with you completely. Writing is thinking. And any tips from Christina Campisi is asking, any tips on being, and this is going to be our last question, any tips on being a good manager to a great leader? Growing from being a good manager to a great leader.
I would say empowerment, mm-hmm. Helping, empowering people to do what they need to do, and to grow and develop. That's one. Two, I would say obstacle removal. So supporting people, helping them to get the things that they need to get done. Mm-hmm. And then finally, actually, no, that's it. Those two, empowerment and obstacle removing. Those are the two things. I think the leadership is probably, that's the empowerment piece, and then the management piece is the obstacle removal.
Fabulous. Wonderful advice. Leah, you're such an interesting person. Did we miss anything that, that we should know about you? I'm sure we missed a lot, but.
No, I think you got it. Thank you, Young Me, so much for the opportunity to share my story. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for the great questions. This was a lot of fun for me. It was a nice break from my Amazon work. So thank you.
Oh, I loved getting to know more about you, Leah. It's only made me more curious. And now I will turn us back to Esther. So.
Thanks, Yami, for hosting this interview. And Leah, thank you for sharing your success story and lessons learned. And we appreciate your ongoing support to AMA New York as part of our advisory council. We hope you have all enjoyed this virtual conversation and that you provide feedback on our post-event survey. And also don't forget to join our next event on March 25th, our fireside chat on marketing the change in America, understanding the roles of research and purpose. Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.